Is this working?
The Bible is just about as long as it is possible for any document to be.
For fuck's sake!
They want to go ahead and they want to take this idea and talk about that as if it's real, as if that's what's real.
This is insane. Look at this vastness.
Hello, and welcome to the Lion Go Show. It is the 25th of May, the Lion Go Show EU edition, and today's topic is morality. And today we have DPR Jones, Wittgenstein, Angry Pumpkin, the first ever PhD on the show, Gary Edwards, and Godless Glenn, sporting a Superman outfit. But yeah. So introduce yourself, Glenn, since you're a new face. Can you unmute your mic now? Glenn? Gary? Gary?
Hello?
Yeah, were you
Can you hear me?
muted?
I was muted, yes, sorry.
Yeah, would you introduce yourself? Since I doubt everyone knows who you are.
Right, yes, my name's Gary. I come from I have a YouTube account, which is sort of Gary Edwards. And basically on that I post my little sketches about philosophy and some of my thoughts about things that are floating about in the YouTube ether.
Okay, what about you, Godless Glenn?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. Well, I've been doing atheistic type videos for a few months consistently now on my channel, which is Godless Glenn. And yeah, I hit a lot of the right-wing, crazy fundamentalist stuff, and that's primarily what I focus on. I throw in a little bit of science, although I'm not a huge science expert, but I have enough understanding of a few things, but
Okay.
that's basically, yeah.
And would you care to introduce yourself, DPR Jones, if no one knows you?
Yes, certainly. I've got a modest YouTube channel, and amongst other things, I have been known to criticise pseudo-intellectual philosophers. So I'm very much looking forward to having a discussion with a real philosopher.
Well, and now we have Wittgenstein and we have Angry Pumpkin. So, how about we talk about, Gary, what we talked about earlier?
And what was that?
The whole possibility that the whole instinctual core of the brain is what the metaphysical ethic is. I forget.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Well, I think we were discussing what sort of what kind of morality or ethics I personally sort of have or adhere to, what position I adhere to, and I was discussing meta-ethical naturalism. Now, what that basically means, in non-jargon speak, is that my worldview, if you like, is that of the natural sciences, of our best empirical theories. So I'm a scientific naturalist, if you like. And I think we were discussing how you can adhere to that worldview and what kind of, and also have a theory of what moral terms mean, what's the nature of moral judgments, in what way do moral judgments exist, and what's the best way of going about forming them. And we were discussing. Does that sound right to you? Was that the gist of the conversation?
But I had a hypothesis possibly why we have these ethics of do not kill and stuff. I think it was.
Right, and how
like the most fundamental of ethics, I guess.
Right, how those could sort of emerge from a physicalist picture, if you like, of a natural picture of the natural world, a naturalist ontology, as it were.
I thought of it more. I mean, fish have that thing too, and I think the fish pretty much have what you would call in our brain would be the brainstem. I think, right? That's all they have, right?
Well,
So,
they have more than just a brainstem, but not much more compared to us.
well,
We've
yeah,
got these.
yes, but pretty
Yeah.
much you could say it's pretty much mostly the brainstem of our brain they're using those functions of.
That's all they've got to use. Yes. And
Yes. So in there would be the core regions of this instinctual ethics, I guess you could say. The thing of, you should not eat the same of you. You should not eat, your children.
yeah, and you can pay some attention to what your conspecifics are doing, your other fish of your species, and other fish that are an important part of your environment. And there's sort of a very basic implementation of what we would recognise, perhaps, if we're that way inclined, as being the foundation of our morality. Clearly, it's not our morality in anything like a complete form, but it's recognisable as being something which you could argue our morality could have evolved from. So you have this physical basis, physical, biological basis that can be understood and discussed in naturalistic terms, from which it's possible to hypothesize that our morality evolved. And there's no amazing incongruous leap which we as naturalists, metaethical naturalists, are supposed to make in order to be able to explain our we're supposed to make it and we're supposed to be unable to make it, to do it. There's nothing like that. It seems that we can extrapolate rationally the morality that we observe in human beings as a phenomena, even in its social complexity, from naturalistic grounds, without committing any of the philosophical, as it were, sins that are accredited to us by our objectors.
Well, yes. I honestly don't think DPR understood any of that. DPR, what are your thoughts?
Well,
if you want to go first.
Well, I would actually go off of to kind of respond to that. I would actually go off something DPR said before the show started, which was I found interesting. And
would you like me to explain what it was that I said?
Well, I remember you saying that it all comes down to definitions. And the one quick thing I would add here is that I think what probably most people, maybe DPR, people like him would object to is that really it just comes down to definitions. So, Gary, when you say we can give a naturalistic account, sure, depending on how you define morality to begin with. And, so obviously like a theist who defines morality as essentially, non-existent unless there's a God, then
sure.
You can't give an account of morality in their sense of the term. So, again, I would say it does come back to that definition aspect.
Yeah, this is why there is some grounds for philosophy, and philosophy needn't be entirely an analytic matter of analysing what words mean and clearing up definitions. But it's always good, don't you think, to go into a discussion with a clear set of ideas as to what you mean, so that you don't really end up talking past each other.
Oh, I think that's absolutely necessary, and in that aspect, I think philosophy has a huge role to play. I mean, yeah.
And so, so for example, if
clarification, of what's actually even being said, so that we're not arguing two completely different points, which I would say most of the time is what's really happening.
And philosophy as a technical discipline can bring something to the table in the terms of it. You can take the truth conditions, as what's called the truth conditions for a particular state of affairs. What the situations that are both necessary and sufficient to entail that something is the case. And then therefore what falls on one side of the definitional line and what falls on the other. Now, not everything can be defined that way, and there are very informal kinds of definitions, but again, it's useful to know whether you are dealing in formal definitions or informal definitions, and that's what that a priori analytic school of philosophy that Craig keeps going on about does bring to the table. However, he does bring with that a kind of 17th century continental rationalists. These were people who, like Descartes and Leibniz and people like that, who thought they could establish truth and existence and all these kind of deep things purely in those terms. But of course, that was immediately countered in the early 18th century by Hume, and then there was Kant. So yes, I can agree. I understand that there's a lot of frustration. There's something that seems fishy when people start trying to conclude that something exists purely on the basis of analytic terms. And yes, it was Hume, Kant, and Mill who put an end to that. And people who do argue for existence on the basis of analysis alone, I agree with you, DPR. You're absolutely right to be suspicious and not to buy it on their authority.
Does anyone else want to add to that? I had something to say.
Go ahead.
Well, I don't know. This is something I've been thinking about. We don't have to go down this road, but I do wonder to what extent, I mean, I think philosophy is not totally devoid of experience either. I mean, you said like analytic philosophy, which is I take to mean like we're analyzing these concepts a priori, just kind of on the basis of the grammar of the sentences, more or less. Again, like DPR said, kind of the definitional justification. And to what extent that idea is actually coherent, the idea of like a priori, really. I mean, every idea in philosophy is itself, in a way, empirical in the fact that it is judged against our experience to gauge whether or not it is accurate or true. I mean, so
yes.
in a sense, I mean, what I'm hinting at is that this line supposedly between, say, science and philosophy is actually a lot more blurred than most people would think, because it's not, I mean, in a very real sense, I think the ideas and quote-unquote theories, if you will, in philosophy are still measured against something, and that something is like experience, which is really the basis of science as well. So,
are you familiar with William Van Orman Quine, the philosopher Quine?
Yeah, Quine.
I mean, this is
like Quine's paradox and stuff.
Yeah, things like that. He's naturalized epistemology, and he was basically a very significant figure in the late 20th century who was a thoroughgoing naturalist who brought these issues into very sharp relief, that there's no radical discontinuity between philosophy and science, really. You can use science to approach philosophical issues, and of course there is some philosophical foundation to anybody to doing science. If you use the methods of science, you're relying on certain claims. You're taking sides in debates that precede the empirical results, but you do have, unlike what a lot of apologists say, you do have rather good reasons for being able to do that. And I'd certainly recommend any scientist who is interested in good, solid philosophical foundations, or grounds at least, for their trust in science as a means of pursuing truth. Certainly read Quine and Sellers and a generation of post-positivist, late 20th century naturalists, Quine, Sellers, Lewis, people like that, Armstrong, who will perhaps give you a little more certainty that there's good reasons to be a scientific naturalist. These people don't get mentioned by apologists. These people they're occasionally quote mined in an unfavourable light in the apologist literature, but nobody really tackles the meat of what these philosophers are saying, and that's very annoying from somebody who comes from that kind of pro-naturalist tradition in philosophy. It's very annoying because it means we're being misrepresented.
Yeah, and I could maybe try to bring this back to morality, unless someone else wants to jump in. Does someone else want to?
APR seems like he's dying to jump in.
Not at all. I'm more than happy to comment on what's being said, but I think someone wanted to revert it back to what I thought the topic was going to be, which was morality. I don't think that I'm evading or avoiding the question of philosophy. My sort of I suppose, criticisms of it. But are we talking about philosophy or are we talking about morality?
Well, isn't there a philosophy? Isn't there a philosophy of morality?
Well,
Should we talk about morality philosophically?
Well, I was going to try to bridge it.
Well, okay. I'm sorry. As soon as you say that, I do have to take an issue with you.
Yeah.
And I get very, very angry and irritated when I hear people say, well, this is a philosophical question. Or
Right.
shall we talk about this from a philosophical point of view? Because my understanding of philosophy, and do tell me if you think that my definition is incorrect, the definition I use of philosophy is thinking. And if that is all you're going to claim that philosophy is, then I have absolutely no problem with it. I positively encourage it. My issue with philosophy is its limitations and the claims by some that philosophy can reach higher goals than I think it can do. So I'm obviously going to have to comment on what's gone on before. You talk about science and philosophy being intertwined. Well, of course they were, until a couple of hundred years ago. They were effectively the same topic, but they branched away. And I think that you would have to accept that science is far more dependent upon empirical evidence than philosophy is now. I'm not saying that philosophy is completely void of empirical evidence, but perhaps the best way of addressing this is to answer the question that I have. Compared with the achievements of science, what do you think the achievements of philosophy are?
Well, you could claim that the preparation of the grounds for that split between the natural philosophy and natural science was laid by a thoroughgoing or a improved or a good philosophical basis, a good philosophical grounds that gave us the basis for the scientific method.
Well, yeah. To put it simply, exactly your point is you could claim science as one of the achievements of philosophy. I mean, you talked about the branching off, but and again, this all
it's not entirely branched off. Yeah.
Well, it comes back again, like I was going to say, it comes back again to the matter of definition. However, you're defining philosophy, and the only thing I want to pick on DPR about is when he says, and maybe he just said this as a kind of shortcut way of saying what, but the idea of like an incorrect definition. There's no correct or incorrect definition. I would say it's just there's just the definition that people use in that circumstance, and you have to judge it according to that.
If I may, I'll explain exactly where I get this from. It's not my invention. It's listening to a podcast by Philosophy Bites, and I say I used to have it readily to hand, and unfortunately it's hidden away somewhere in the recesses of my computer memory, and I'd love everyone to hear it. But effectively what they do is ask 30 of the top philosophers in the world at the moment to define philosophy, and there is no, out of about 30 people, there is no one consistent answer. Many of them say that they can't define it. Others come up with some explanation, but the only common thread between all of the answers is an invitation to think and question.
So
and as I say, if that's the definition of philosophy, then I positively encourage it.
But I would say it's a mistake to try to look for the common thread, because then you're trying to again look for this ephemeral divine definition. All I'm saying is that that in terms of when it comes down to definitions, it doesn't matter. There's no sense in saying one's correct or incorrect. All that matters is what the person making the claim means by that word. Yeah.
No, I'm terribly sorry. I have to disagree with you. If we can't define a word, then there's no point in discussing it.
Oh no, I'm not saying we can't define a word. I'm saying what matters is the definition in the context.
All right. What is your definition of philosophy?
Can I volunteer a sort of definition? I'm going to go very traditionally with a love of wisdom, and then try and sort of unpack that a little bit as to clarify what might be involved in a love of wisdom. And I'm not saying this is the definition, but it might be a talking point, a starting point for a discussion, is that I think a love of wisdom possibly has, let's say, two components. Let's say to be somebody who shows an appetite for wisdom or a love of wisdom, you need to respect truth You have some kind of respect for truth, and you might need to have some appreciation of value or beauty or whatever you want to call it as well. And then philosophy could be very broadly under that. It could be thinking, if you like, which is conducive to those ends. So respecting truth, we may, for example, it might be deference to cogent argument, a willingness and the discipline to be able to accept the conclusion of cogent arguments, even if they militate against our deeply held beliefs. Something like that. So we can analyse what the virtue of wisdom is, and then unpack philosophy in those terms. And I wonder what you think of taking that approach to the definition, DPR.
Well, I'll tell you what I think is a useful definition of philosophy, and that is that it is a method by which we question the underlying axioms that we use to examine the world. I'm quite happy to use that as a definition of philosophy, and I think it's actually
but what reason
a very productive one.
Why would we do? Why would
well,
we
I'll tell you. I'll give you an
example.
example in a very straightforward way. Why does 2 + 2 = 4? Does that have any meaning? Say for us putting labels on, and it's impossible to, for me anyway, to describe it. Two objects you call 2, and you add another 2 objects, and we give that a label 4. But does that mean there is an underlying truth that 2 + 2 = 4? Well, in my view, yes, it does, because we are imposing that mathematical rule. Now, extend that to, if there were no observers in the universe, would there still be 8? Possibly 9, but
No.
8 planets orbiting the sun in our solar system.
No.
And well, no, you see, I'm terribly sorry. This is why I have a problem. I think undoubtedly they would be.
No, I mean there would be 8 planets, but the problem is there would be no word 8.
Yes.
Yeah, there would be.
We certainly agree on that. Yes.
But these issues are drawn out. These issues are drawn out to sort of like to try and understand the limits or the nature of our thinking on this matter, so that we can better ascertain how to achieve truth. Is reality real, independent, observer independent, or is it a matter of concern? It's an issue. I mean, yes or no.
It isn't an issue, though. In my view, it isn't an issue. And you raise an interesting point, and I'd really like to hear your response to my comments on this. I don't think that you can say the reality. You can question reality. We have to presume that reality is as we perceive it. Otherwise, all sorts. Yes.
the question is,
I quite accept I am, but if reality isn't as we perceive it, then what is it?
No, the question is, what do you mean by reality in that sentence? If by reality,
perhaps I am begging the question then.
Well,
Yes.
because
Sorry, carry on.
Well, if by reality you mean, say, my direct experience, then that, of course, is really real in every sense. I would say,
Well, hold on.
It would be nonsense. Okay.
I would say that one of the lessons that science brings to philosophy is things aren't initially as they appear to be. And again, this is part of the interplay between our philosophical and our scientific parts of the discipline of seeking wisdom, is that, can we trust naive realism? Can we trust our perceptions as a guide to reality, as we must believe it's out there independent of our minds in order to survive? Can we? And I think the lesson of science is, well, no, not really. There's a thing, again, I refer to Sellers, there's a thing called the myth of the given. The idea that that things are just given to us, revealed, if you like, to us in first person, immediate, manifest terms, and are thus and are as such beyond criticism. Well, that's an idea that science militates against. It looks like the sun goes around the earth, but in matter of fact, when you make closer observations and you posit an alternative hypothesis and test it, you realise that that's not the case. So again, there's this interplay. These are live issues, and they affect they affect us in real life, because I think a large part of the problem our community has with those who are theists, or those who are of a very orthodox and strident faith, is that they do seem to fall into that trap of hypocrisy and conceit, whereby their way of seeing the world that is revealed to them or is presupposed is true beyond question. And that's part of, we feel uneasy with that, because we come from an Enlightenment tradition where we go, well, that's not the case. We might have to think about things.
But could I ask you a question then? Do you think there are any things that we can know?
Is knowledge possible?
Yeah.
Yes, knowledge is possible.
In what, middle world, so to speak?
Middle world,
Do you understand what I mean by that? Because you were talking about sort of like the physics of the... I presume that you're talking about the very small and the very large, where
the quantum and the fact, but in the Aristotelian scale of everyday objects, is knowledge possible? Yes, knowledge is possible.
Yeah.
We can.
Do you conceive, or do you consider 2 + 2 to equal 4 to be knowledge or a label? And if not, what do you consider knowledge to be?
Well, it's an equation, so it's 2 + 2 = 4 is a balance between two sets, which are the two names for the identical set.
I phrased my question badly. What do you consider knowledge?
Okay, it's a coherent body of justified belief, of facts, a coherent body of facts. We know we have a mental picture which is coherent, and the statements of which it consists are verified statements. So it's basically a coherent arrangement of truth. That's what I would consider knowledge to be, and that's possible. But we can never perhaps say that's it, certain. We've got it. That's it. This is beyond forever, beyond revision. We're not going to change this, because, especially, well, at all levels, whether it's at the quantum level or the entire universe, we have to be open-minded to change, because that's what our methodology sort of imposes on us. It's open-ended. We have to be able to adapt in response to the evidence.
But there are some things, wouldn't you agree, that we can know absolutely, just like I said, direct experience. It's almost meaningless to deny that.
Can you give me
Can you give me an example? Because I'm telling you something. I'm not being deliberately ignorant. Philosophy is not something that I have a great deal of knowledge about. So I'm curious to know. Give an example.
That I am experiencing this conversation, or that I am speaking.
Yeah. Because I'll tell you why. Well, it could be wrong, because I hear it constantly from the likes of Ten Kate and others, that we could be a brain in a vat.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Well, here's the problem with that. Even if I were a brain in the vat, that wouldn't negate that I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing. Again,
we're still having the reality that we're having, even if our reality is something completely different.
Yeah, the kind of semantical trick there is when what you're trying to call quote unquote real or true, the criteria for that all of a sudden becomes say corresponds to some external reality, right? That the reality of, say, the external reality here, meaning like the brain in the jar or the person in the psych ward or something like that. But even if that were the case externally, so if you mean true in that our experience corresponds to that external quote-unquote truth, okay, then that's one idea of truth, which I think is somewhat actually unnecessary or to a certain degree meaningless. But that still doesn't negate the fact that if by true I mean, yes, this experience right here and now is what is happening. And even if I'm a brain in the vat, that still is what's being experienced, regardless of whether or not whatever is inducing that experience exists in some external world. So that doesn't negate it at all.
Okay. Can you be sure of the nature of the I that is experiencing this happening? I mean, you say I am experiencing this. Isn't there a conceptual baggage in this sense of I? Isn't there? isn't the conceptual baggage in your immediate interpretation of the sensations that you are interpreting as you being here having this conversation? Are these things just, if you're claiming these things are just given to you in a conceptually unproblematic way, then perhaps you owe us some explanation of how that can be the case. Given
it would be
the countless examples.
But can I pause you there, because this is one of the things that I find quite irritating about philosophy. That you could talk about this till the cows come home, for want of a better expression. The fact is, I think one of the most wonderful philosophers, although I don't see what he does as philosophy, just thinking and talking sense, is A.C. Grayling. Yeah. And when he was asked, do we have free will? He came up with the most wonderful answer, which was, I think that we must assume that we do.
We do. Yeah.
Because otherwise, as I say, we could end up in really boring, and I'm sorry to label it in this way, pseudo-intellectual, claptrap, middle-class, dinner party, boring conversation. And I'm sorry, I find it utterly boring. What is the point of talking endlessly about whether we experience the same things? Yes, in some regards we don't. My eyesight is different. So if I didn't wear my glasses, I'm sure I would look at things in a slightly different way. Some people are colorblind. So yes, in many ways we can identify that on a most basic level, that our interpretation of the world is different. But come on. Sure. Are you having the same experience as me? We've just got to accept that we are. What is the alternative to accepting that we are all experiencing the same thing?
Ideal solipsism.
Wait. Let me try to appeal.
Wait. Let Pumpkin go.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I see the point DPR's making, and I would say yes, we're all experiencing basically the same thing, but it's the way in which we perceive it that the differences arise, which is why I would say a lot of people would subscribe to certain philosophical views because they see, well, yes, this view coincides with my perception, and this view coincides with somebody else's. So,
Can I just clarify what you're saying? Because there are a couple of different interpretations that you can take on what you've just said. I don't think that observing a ball falling and timing it is something that is really open to subjective opinion. What I think you're suggesting is that, let's say, a statement that someone makes to you can be interpreted personally in a subjective way, and not everyone would obviously share that personal interpretation or whatever. That I can accept, but that's just individuality. I'm sorry, am I misunderstanding something?
Well, let me try to phrase it this way. Let me try to appeal to your sense of pragmatism, which is to say whether or not the idea has any use at all. So let me ask you by asking this: Is it falsifiable? I mean, I would say the idea that, say, we're living actually in a matrix, that there is some external reality that is completely different or the same, for that matter, to our actual direct first-person experiences. Is that falsifiable in any way? Can we falsify that we're in a matrix or that external reality? I mean, by definition, this external reality cannot be experienced. Would you at least agree that it's unfalsifiable?
Yes, I will. Willingly.
So in the
same breath, I'll also say it's utterly pointless discussing it, because so what? If I am a brain in a vat, everything to me seems real. So let's just carry on as if we. Everyone is experiencing a reality. I'm sorry. I honestly, I don't mean to be disrespectful to philosophers and philosophy, but I find this sort of thing so mundane.
No, but let me just
Why do we have to waste our time talking about it?
Can I agree with you?
Wait. I'm so glad he's saying this, though, because that's exactly what a solipsist would say. That this idea of an external world, whatever it is, doesn't matter. It doesn't.
May I?
It's unfalsifiable. And so in terms of pragmatic use, it has no use whatsoever.
I thought a synopsis would say it has no use because it's all in my head.
No.
Is this Wittgensteinian
Just come
talking
with.
now?
Just come with.
Wait,
Yes.
what do you make of the claim that all explanations must come to an end at some point? This is Wittgenstein, of course.
Of
Wittgenstein
course,
said
yes.
all
Yeah, he
explanations
said-
must come to an end. What would you say to that? And because that seems
Well, what he said
similar
was,
to what DPR is saying.
yeah, and what he said was what we're left with is description. Explanation comes to an end, and all we can do is describe, and that's all I'm appealing to. It's all. No. That's what. Wait, what?
Sorry, DPR, I didn't catch that.
Didn't catch it.
I'm terribly sorry. I thought someone was quoting what I'd said, and it didn't sound like anything I had said.
It's what carry on.
Yeah, it's what Ludwig Wittgenstein, a philosopher, said. He was, yeah.
I often get confused with him.
He was a friend with your icon, your avatar, of course.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, I'm a card-carrying Wittgensteinian. If you can tell by now.
You're also a synopsis.
Well,
but there is sort of like a practical point that at some point DPR is right. We can't go on pursuing these questions forever. We have to act in the world at some point, and we have to take what we've got at that point, the best that we can hope for at that point, and go with it. I mean, would you agree with that, DPR?
Well, I certainly was going to agree with the point that that I just made, which is I think
is that a good explanation?
It's not pointless. I'd say it's sort of like is entertaining for a few minutes, and then it becomes utterly boring and tedious. We must presume. I'm sorry. My position is we must presume, as A.C. Groening sort of like said about free will, we must assume that we have it. We must assume that we are living in a real world, that we perceive or have a capacity to perceive to a certain degree reality, and we must behave, and this is bringing it back to the title of the show, we must behave in a moral way as a result of the fact that we are a social species living in a society, and our actions do actually have consequences.
Okay, now I'd agree with that, DPR. I'd agree with you that entirely. My plea for the validity of philosophy would be that in the small amount of time we've got to decide what is best, what are the good grounds for acting, that's philosophy is well employed in that small time frame. You know, drawing on the wisdom of others and the learning and the thinking, and we can perhaps best decide what, you know, we can get a good picture, we can get a good worldview, we can criticise and analyse and then act. I absolutely agree with you that that it can turn into an endless tail chasing exercise. Absolutely. But let's, if we bring this around to morality, of course, we can discuss what are the good grounds for for moral action.
Can we? This is, I hope, what we're going to discuss, because I would question it in the same way that if you give the trolley problem, and I assume that everyone here knows what the trolley problem is, if you give that to a religious person and invite them to look at their good book and tell you what the answer is, they're not going to derive the answer from their good book. It's not possible. And I have to say that I would put the same accusation against a philosopher. If a philosopher can tell me what the answer to the trolley problem is, then I might hold them in higher regard. But they're going to face the same problem, aren't they?
You've made a philosophical criticism of their theistic approach, of their divine command approach. You've made the criticism that, but look, if you think conceptually about what you're doing, you're starting off with your intuition and then justifying it in terms of your divine revelation. That's a conceptual criticism. So you've already started to do a bit of
I don't see it that way. If you say that I'm doing philosophy, then I will say yes, I'm doing thinking. But I do not see thinking as exclusive to a philosopher. In the same way, I do not accept there is such a thing as a philosophical argument or a philosophical point of view or a philosophical description. These are just descriptions. Drop the label. It is not helpful.
But
Answer my basic question. Is there any answer to the trolley problem that philosophy can give you and religion cannot?
Well, I would say that's a weird question, because the answer to the trolley problem is however that the individual answers. I mean, the trolley problem is a question, and you can answer either way. There's no
right answer,
so to speak, correct answer. There's no right answer, so to speak. Yeah, in the sense that, like, we could test scientifically, right? What is the correct answer to that? I mean, it's just and that's why I say it just comes down to a matter of sentiment, emotions, basically, and aesthetics. I mean, which
it doesn't actually. It doesn't. It goes beyond that. It goes to human psychology. And okay. you can introduce all sorts of variants to the trolley problem.
Can I give my?
Sorry,
go ahead, Gary.
Okay, can I give my answer before? And I think there's one other, but I'm a bit confused as to how many of us there are. Two others. I can just give my answer to your question, DPI, would be yes, it can, because it can view things in a broader way, an more open-minded way, and a more critical way. Philosophy doesn't have certain avenues closed down to it because of faith. So my answer would be yes.
Well, in that case, what is the answer?
Oh, I don't know what the answer is. I'm just answering your question.
We might as well talk about
I mean, like
wait. What do you mean by the answer? What do you mean by the answer? His answer?
The answer to the trolley problem. Yeah, could you define it? Can you talk about the trolley problem in a way where it needs a specific answer rather than pointing something out about our moral intuitions? Because I think the trolley problem is an inquiry into our intuitions regarding certain moral situations, rather than a problem as to what should you do. I think that's something that's my understanding of the trolley problem. Anyways, that it's more of an exploration of our intuitions rather than a quandary.
The reason that I raised it was to show the example that philosophy has its limitations. If philosophy can truly help us define what moral values are, then ultimately it will be able to tell us what the solution to the trolley problem is.
Well, it can improve that.
I introduced it purely for that reason.
Yeah. Well, I'd say yes, it can, because in being a wisdom-loving, truth-respecting approach towards getting the answer, it doesn't suffer from some of the drawbacks that a blind faith position or an irrational position would have. Perhaps, for example, with regards to the trolley problem, perhaps we can better understand the intuitions that are in play as to whether an intentional action is different from something that happens unmediated and so forth. Perhaps we can just sort of better understand that. Perhaps those questions can be addressed scientifically. Now, this is a philosophical issue which is worth discussing in moralities. Can we use science? Can we use empirical theories to investigate morality and our moral judgments? Mm-hmm. Birds.
Well,
was that posed at me? I apologise.
That's just a general sort of a stepping off point if people want to discuss to sort of trying to bring it back to morality.
Well, yes, I'm quite happy to go down that path, but as I say, I think it's not going to be a fruitful one. But please, let's go ahead.
I mean, the way I think I would try to bridge the two is to say, to take a kind of Wittgensteinian approach, which is to say, quit looking for the meaning. Look for simply the way it's used in everyday life. So if we want to talk about, morality, talk about the way in which that word and moral words are actually used, are actually applied to everyday life in useful ways, And, yeah. So how do people use the word more? I mean, I would say the trolley problem for me exactly illustrates the way in which people actually answer that question, shows to me how incredibly subjective and emotional it is. Because you can pose the trolley problem in two different ways, in which people will give one answer, and then in the second scenario, they give basically the exact opposite answer. So any moral principle you try to derive,
you can add all sorts
is
of
elusive.
variants. You can add all sorts of variants to the trolley problem. For example, you can put the 5 as convicted murderers and paedophiles, and that will change people's opinions. So this is my point. There is no answer to it, but let's.
Well, there is.
Can we? What? Okay, there is an answer to it. It's a subjective answer. But are you saying? Perhaps is my point. There is no objective answer that philosophy can give.
Is there an answer? Could science? Do you think natural science could help us understand an answer? Or get us to an answer?
I think that Sam Harris has tried to do this, and I find his arguments very unpersuasive.
Me too.
There is no right answer.
To the trolley
And
problem?
I have yes, to the trolley problem.
Well, yeah, I don't see that either.
Well, if I may, I would generally say that if it's the trolley problem as I had it first shown to me, you choose whether or not to kill one person or 5 people. Science would say, or not science, but in terms of biology and genealogy and shit like that, you're going to want to kill the one person because that means a smaller shrinkage in the gene pool, which would, lead to a higher chance.
But what happens if those 5 people were going to hurt you? So wouldn't it be better to kill the 5 people if they were going to hurt you?
Yeah, but that's just adding on a variable. If you're going for the base trolley problem.
Yeah, but the point of the trolley problem is you don't know those variables, and so those people could be anybody.
Yeah, they could be serial killers who are going to kill you after you kill.
I mean, that's the real trolley problem. Once you know the identity of the people who are going to be killed, it's really not the trolley problem.
So, have any of you guys read the book? I'm assuming you've read the book by Sam Harris. What was it that you guys had a problem with in his attempt to explain science and answer morality with science? What was the problem?
Can I go ahead?
The problem was that he was trying to apply objective standards to something that I do not think are susceptible to objective standards.
Well, look, what's not objective is the definition again. What he does is he defines it, that's fine, and then he says, given that definition, we can objectively find out how to achieve these values. But I think the big criticism is that you can't say the value itself is what's objective. So his grounds for morality is human well-being, and that's the arbitrary ground. I mean, you can't.
Yes, but that's the issue, isn't it? He's using that standard, but I don't think that you can apply an objective standard to human well-being.
Well, he can't come to that value via science. In other words.
Yes. Thank you. We're in agreement.
Yeah.
See, I've not read this book. So
I just want to say that I haven't said there is just one absolute answer. Kind of what I was trying to get across, and I think I completely butchered it, was that if you want to take it from a different stance, you can. Like all things in reality, or whatever you really want to call it, it's based on your perception of the situation. So
I thought we'd spent the first 30 minutes of the show saying that it wasn't.
No, that it was. That's what I said. I agree with that. The assumption.
All right, do you mind? Because I was really intrigued to talk about morality as opposed to philosophy, and I know it's not my show, but hey, as a guest, I'm going to be rude enough to ask. I know it's terribly impolite of me, but dealing with issues of morality, leaving the trolley problem aside, and let's ask the philosophers, do you think that human morality comes from basic human nature, as I do, explicable by our evolutionary process, or do you think it is in any way more involved than that?
I think that's sufficient. I think a naturalistic basis for morality is sufficient for the phenomena of morality that we examine and that we see.
Yeah, sounds about right. But obviously,
So
how we're raised, different people in different families and in different cultures, they develop different morality, obviously, but I think it can be explained mostly by just from an evolutionary standpoint, how we got the morality that we have.
Well, you could say, in
Well,
other
I mean,
words,
Why?
I have a hypothesis which I told Gary earlier. Like, I think like if you want to think of like a simple model diagram of morality, would be consciousness is what our morality is. But outside of that, where we get the whole do not kill others of your own species and stuff, which we see that as huge taboos, it's like a giant circle around that that's like primal instincts, I guess. It would be a primal instinct. That's just my, like, I don't know, if I had a diagram, it would be easier.
And for me,
you get what I'm saying, though, right?
Yeah.
well, in other words, morality is just an expression of psychological emotions and kind of aesthetics, that happens to be, and then you can explain, yes, our psychology and physiology in terms of evolution. That's all straightforward. I think the big confusion or like trick that always happens especially with theists, or I could say the equivocation almost, about discussions of morality is that it always comes back to the question of, well, is that moral true? As if it's, and what I fundamentally question is that the idea that statements of morality and ethics have any truth value whatsoever. In other words, they're simply expressions of like emotions. I mean, A.J. Ayers basically put forward this view, and I largely agree with it. That like, so when we say stealing is wrong, he said, that's basically somebody just yelling stealing, and it's just like an expression of his emotional state at that moment. It's
Right.
You can't. It's actually ultimately meaningless to try, or not meaningless, but you can't derive a truth value for that statement. There's no criteria by which you can say it's true or false. That it is or is not moral to say steal. All that can really be said is whether or not the speaker who says that statement, what if you want to derive a truth value, the only truth of that statement could be whether or not that's how he feels.
Well, I think
you seem to be agreeing with my idea that morality cannot in any possible way be described as objective.
Yes.
Thank you.
Unless, then you get into the whole, what do you mean by objective and subjective? And that's just a great source of confusion too. And I would say, just as a
I'll give an example of what I'm trying to refer to when I say objective. I'm trying to understand the William Lane Craigs of the world, who seem to think that a God-given objective morality is somehow floating around in the ether, whether we can actually tap into it or not, but that morality is there. I think that argument is a nonsense. I do not think there is possibly any explanation for an objective morality, because morality is man-made. And a man-made thing cannot, by definition almost, be objective. Yes?
Well, what's funny is that he defines objective as mind independent from most videos I've seen, and then he defines God as a mind. So how is morality given by God, which is a being, a subjective being itself, a mind?
I think you're
mind independent.
Is it Euthyphro's dilemma that he doesn't really broach in that?
I think it's the trilemma.
Oh well.
Trilemma.
I forget what it is. So what's it called?
That's a debate in and of itself.
I mean, he defines God as good. I think it is, right? That's what Aquinas did, and that's what he does. He doesn't actually answer the dilemma.
Not only all good, all wonderful, all powerful, all loving, and whatever. His basic argument, so far as I understand it, as a simpleton and not a philosopher, is that whatever God does is all wonderful. God cannot be criticized. I just
now the only thing that I would say, the only thing I would say is objective, is the instinctual part of morality, the part that is so basic that even fish get it, that fish have it. If that's like what I mean, but that's pretty much the only thing I would say. Anything more, like cultural, um, anything more, anything that is only attuned to us or higher mammals, is more of a, I guess the frontal lobes is the factor. I guess I would say.
But I wanted to address this issue when someone had mentioned that you can't drive a truth issue on these statements of morality. I think you can in a way because, like if you say stealing is wrong, well, you could say, well, you're making it, well, you're saying this is an absolute truth that stealing is wrong, or it's just a truth, it's just a moral truth. But I think in a way it is because um, more so than the emotions behind it, is because you are harming someone. You are, when you steal from someone, you are harming someone else because they worked hard, to get these things, to get the money they have. Well, I'm assuming.
But of course, if you're stealing for your to feed your family, that harm is outweighed by the fact that it's actually doing more good than harm.
But if you're not stealing for
if
your
you
family,
also, if I could throw in one, I don't know whether this is on point, but I mean, if you're a doctor and you are trying to save someone's life and you have to saw off their leg, you're going to cause them pain and suffering in doing so,
Right.
but it's for an ultimate good. So I'm not sure that your definition is, well, I think there's a problem with it. Do you follow?
You're talking.
About what is good to someone may obviously could involve harm. I mean, let's take one of the Ten Commandments, and we have to take it first from the King James version of the Bible. One of the Ten Commandments is "Thou shalt not kill." Mm-hmm. Now, by the time they got down to the New International Version, they'd realised that didn't really make much sense, and they actually changed it to "Thou shalt not murder."
Murder.
So there is obviously even the religious recognise, or some of them at least, recognise there is a difference between murder and killing. And killing is possibly acceptable. Murder is not. And there are many circumstances in which I think that you would have absolutely no problem in justifying, if not by yourself, but the murder or the killing of someone. And one example I sometimes use is if you're sitting next to a passenger on an aeroplane and you see that as he halfway through the flight he opens up his jacket and he's got a huge bomb there and he's just about to pull the ignition on this bomb, killing him, if that was the only means you had to stop him doing it, would be perfectly justifiable. Right. And no one would have any problem with that. And again, it goes back to 2 points. Firstly, that you're not going to get absolute morality from the Bible. And secondly, I just don't see that you can get objective morality from anywhere, because there are many people who would say, no, I wouldn't kill him. I want him to blow up this aeroplane. So this is what I'm saying. I'm sorry,
could they be wrong?
Long-windedly and badly, but there is no such thing as objective morality.
But is it possible to be wrong about morality? Is it possible that the people who say, "Oh no, I wouldn't kill the person in that circumstances," are wrong? They ought to kill the person in that.
Yes, I think there is.
Could be.
So if it's true act in that way, if moral statements are truth act in that way, they can be said to be true or false. Isn't that a form of moral collectivism? You can say you don't know what morality is.
You didn't allow me to finish. I would say that there are certain moral judgments that I would disagree with, and therefore I would say that they are wrong. I think that the sexual abuse of a child is wrong. Now, that is, to a large degree, entirely, it's subjective. And the only way you're going to get to objectivity there is if you can assume or argue that you can get to objectivity by a summation of subjective views, which you cannot, because there will be some people who do not have a problem with sexually abusing a child. So yes, I can make judgment calls on morality issues, but I cannot say for certain that I'm right, because there is no right by which I can be judged.
But at some point we have to make the decision if we're going to police the sexual abuse of children.
And society does that incredibly well. The
It
law
does
is
it well.
very-
It does.
the law
It
is a
does
very-
well. Yeah.
the
Well,
law
sort of.
is the law is a very good reflection of the moral attitudes of certainly in this country and probably in the countries that you all live in.
Well, could it
But
be?
it becomes, sorry, let me finish, please. It does become, it gains that status. It's able to do that, is it not, by, to some degree, saying what is right and wrong in these matters is independent of opinion.
Right.
No, it does it by, in my view, by majority opinion, and that is what democracy is all about.
Well,
I'm sorry, God.
that may be its means of doing that, of saying the majority opinion is superior to the particular opinion. But it is,
Yes.
in doing that, even so, saying that what is right and wrong is not a matter of opinion.
Well, look.
No, it cannot be anything else but a matter of opinion, because there's no objective standard by which you can judge it. What I'm saying is that the laws generally reflect the, quite rightly, the majority view. Now, that is not to say that the majority view is right. For example, you could look at Nazi Germany and say, well, you know, we don't accept that the majority there, that they thought that they were superior and could go around killing whoever they wanted to, invading countries, exterminating Jews. We can say that that's wrong. The majority didn't. Well, I do seriously question whether the majority did support that.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is, we're talking now, or what you're moving on to, I think, is how we reflect through a democratic society the majority view. But I fully accept that that's got nothing to do with whether it's morally right or wrong. I'm sorry, I'll shut up.
Go ahead, Edward.
Oh, no, I'm Edward. Just call me Gary. It's my first name. Yeah, I think it means that at some point, you know, we have to have what's called moral cognitivism. We have to at least act, as you said earlier. We have to act like we know what's right and wrong. That as if statements, moral statements like murder is wrong and so forth, have some truth value, or can have a truth value.
Yeah,
as if
like I said, though, the truth, it's perfectly, I think, workable just to have that truth value, meaning whether or not it accurately reflects that's how the person feels. And we as a society feel like it's wrong to hurt people in that, you know, in the sense of murdering them. So it's I mean, in that sense, it's just...
Well, could we...
Hang on. Let me throw this one in. I don't know where people come from, but, for example, I am utterly opposed to the death penalty. There are many people in America, and I don't know whether anyone here is from America, and there are many people in America who have no problem at all with the death penalty. Now, there's an example of two different systems. In this country, we abolished the death penalty best part of 60 years ago. In America, certain states, I know that not all of them, but certain states still have the death penalty. I think it's abhorrent, but they think it's perfectly acceptable. So who's right in that situation? I would not be so bold as to say that I am right. I just have personal views about the death penalty.
Your personal views, they are your personal views, but
Yes.
But if you are in dialogue with those people and you have an opportunity to change their mind for what you conceive of to be the better, is it not useful to have some sense that that your statements can be true or false? So, if nothing else, you can rationally argue for them.
I have rationally argued with a couple of people in America who did support the death penalty until they talked to me about it, and then they changed their views. But that doesn't mean that I'm right.
So if you argue for, if you argue for them rationally, doesn't that sort of assume that you too think that this is a matter that has something to do with truth or falsehood, rather than showing them a moving film about?
I think there's another way to explain that.
All it means is that they were persuaded by the reasons
Well,
I had.
there is no. I would say, DPR, that you're as right as you say you are for that case with morality, because I mean, you could, I guess, compare, our ethics and stuff to other ethics in the animal kingdom. Like, what do mammals do? What do animals do? But the problem with that is, like, some insects eat their own husband. So let's do that.
Well, could I help maybe clarify this? Because I think the way in which you finally appeal to someone like that, and the way you persuade them, is by appealing to a value that they hold that you hold. In other words, a common value at bottom. So, in other words, you don't have to then therefore say, again, if you really want to hear it phrased in a truth value sense, in a knowledge sense, you can say, is it true that they also feel that way? And in that sense, it's true, but beyond that, asking whether or not is it true that, say, harming people is wrong is meaningless, unless to say, is it true that people feel that way? And so what I'm saying, though, is that there's because you're saying, how can you rationally argue, say, with someone who feels the death penalty is right when you don't? And I think the eventual base is that common value. And I think you could be pretty broad and say the common value is, say, the well-being of society or something. As long as they at least have like that common value, then you can say, okay, then you can make your argument in rational terms that, okay, it's actually better for the well-being of society to not have the death penalty than it is to have it. And then, then you have your rational.
That was one of the two arguments that I used. The evidence that the death penalty reduces crime is simply unsupported by evidence.
But would you say?
But the second argument I used was that I thought it was an unhealthy human emotion to seek retribution in that way. Yes, revenge.
Yeah, but you see the two tiers I'm talking about. The first tier is that foundational tier, which is the value that, say, you and a lot of people agree with, that, say, you want society to flourish, or something pretty broad and vague like that. And then there's the second tier of like, well, how do we get to that? And that second tier includes things like the death penalty, and that's where there's largely disagreement on that second and third tier.
What about facts? DPR mentioned that people change their mind in view of facts. So can facts actually influence our moral outlook, our overlapping consensus?
Well, let me just wait. One more thing to add, just to finish that thought, because what I'm saying, though, more importantly, is that first tier, again, that's just, in a sense, that's the subjective opinion value that someone may or may not have. If someone doesn't value, whether or not society flourishes, there's really nothing to appeal to than that. That's just, and that shows it is all matter.
I struggle with it, and please explain how you define flourishing of society.
Oh, well, no, I don't necessarily. That wasn't part of the idea. I'm just trying to. What I'm pointing to is, though, this common value that the majority of people share, and I think that's the thing we can ultimately appeal to, without going into whether or not those values are true.
Well,
It's just a matter of whether or not people hold those values.
The question is, though, what makes people hold values?
And can we take those values as a given? Aren't those values perhaps up for some critical revision, lest they lead us into doing bad things?
But again, I would say it's just a matter of kind of our psychology, physiology, and our evolution. There are some people who don't value, say, society living. There's some people who want everything to die and humanity, So there are those kind of people, and so with those kind of people, there's no argument.
This conception of flourishing then can actually be based on facts. We can take a look at the facts of our background, our evolution, and our nature. Perhaps we can, I'm asking actually, can we project perhaps, what these overlapping consensuses, how we can revise our ideas of these and improve them or whatever, on the basis of facts?
Well, again, I would say there's a difference between that initial rule, that initial proposition that, say, like, let's make society flourish, or, rather, how you define flourishing. That's kind of the foundational thing here. And then, yes, then from, like, Sam Harris, tries to make the premise of his book. From then on, it's a pretty objective, straightforward manner. I mean, you can just kind of scientifically derive, well, how's the best way to achieve that value? But again, that value as the starting point is up for grabs, It's just a matter of opinion. It's how people feel.
But if it's influenced by facts, it is something perhaps that's rooted in people's desires and their values, but it can be revised in the light. I mean, I'm sure all of us here have changed our moral opinions in the light of facts that have come to light. I mean, would that be true in
surprisingly few, I imagine. But just going back to the original point, unless you can define what flourishing is, then the discussion is worthless. If you say, well, flourishing means, and I know that sort of like Harris does try and do this, means X, Y, and Z, then we can discuss it. But if you use a bland term such as we should all live as society would
should hold hands. Yes.
Well, that could lead to all sorts of situations. Which I'm
so we need a clearer idea of what this flourishing is, don't we?
Does that mean thriving, having a golden age? Does that mean
it could mean anything.
Does that mean annihilating everyone else besides yourself?
Maybe it just means having a research program so we can actually try and understand these things better, so we can sort of clarify our idea of what flourishing is in that kind of Aristotelian sense.
Well, I would say we want to flourish because that's more of an instinctual property of our morality than it is.
But we need to understand the instinct because, as I was saying earlier on, I think to the host, some of our instincts are pretty dark and nasty, or they can be. So we perhaps have to think critically about our instincts and not just take our instincts as a revelation as to what's right and true and good.
Wait, what's that word Craig uses? That what's the word? He uses he goes for your what? What's it called? Your not your mind.
Your personal experience.
No.
Credulity.
I know the word. It just fucking died out of my head. What was it? Your cognition? No, not your intuition. That's it. Your intuition.
That's intuition.
Yeah, could it be that your instincts or your intuition?
It can just go for your intuition, but intuition is notoriously unreliable.
Well, yes, it is.
In many instances.
Well, not only that, but look at the huge variety. I mean, biological systems have diversity, and humanity's no exception. So there are people who will just simply not value the things that most people value. I mean, there are such things as sociopaths and psychopaths. I mean, we call them chemically flawed or whatever, but I mean, again, that's kind of begging the question, on what basis? I mean, if the majority of people were like that, then we would call the people who value well-being flawed, right? I mean, they would be the ones out of step.
Would we be here to do that?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah,
What do you mean? Would we be here?
Well, we perhaps the fact that most of us aren't psychopaths is due to the evolutionary advantage of genuine cooperation.
But again, it's more conducive to survival, and if that's your interest is to survive, then but not everyone wants to even survive.
But we don't want. But would you say humanity is those who want to survive, or is it everybody? Because if you don't want to survive, then you kind of self-terminate, in a sense. Like, you will obviously go down a path that will lead you to self-termination, won't you?
Of course.
Yes. So
if you're... and then again, if that's how you're defining better, then that's better for society, because tautologically, it just means that society surviving is good for society surviving,
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean... There are people who don't want society to survive.
Wow,
and so
we have spammers. We have spammers. Wow. You guys see this?
I can't see any feeds at the moment.
Glenn, you see it?
Yeah. Yeah, bitch.
Oh my gosh, what the hell?
Yeah, I know. Wait, I'll boot that person.
Yeah.
I do. Man,
Well, think about this. The future generation, okay, if they're able to get rid of all kinds of diseases that we're not able to before a baby is born, think about the moral implications that a lot of, especially people, right-wing fundamentalists, people like that, who are so against abortion. But let's say, in the minds of these people, they are creating a better world, a world not where you can only survive, but thrive. And they want the whole population to be a superior race without disease and, different things like that. So there are different ways to, of course, there, as with everything, there's different ways to, different angles to approach that.
Would you think we'd be better off in challenging that if we could talk of morality as something that has got something to do, or at least is informed by truths that are mind independent?
what do you mean by truths?
Truths, statements that are true. Truths where their subjects do what their predicates say.
How can statements exist to be true without a mind?
They need not have. They don't have to exist without a mind. They might be a mind. There might be a naturalistic mind. Remember, I think earlier on we reached some kind of consensus that whatever morality is, it's sort of, we can account for it in terms of naturalism. Maybe that's what we've got to convince them of. Maybe we've got to argue for our naturalism and that our point of view isn't as flawed as they seem to think it is. So saying, look, no, you can have morality. And perhaps we need to be able to talk a little bit more in terms of what we say when we talk about morality being true and false, just so that we can persuade people who take that kind of view that they might be wrong. Maybe there's something in what's called moral cognitivism, that we can talk about these things as if there are some truths somewhere up for grabs. Now, they might not necessarily have to be the truths of moral commandments. These might not be the things that morality perhaps are about. I think often we cede too much to the conservative theist in moral debates too early on. We presume that morality is all about rules very early on, and then we're basically playing, in their part of the field. We're playing, they've got the advantage over us because they're on about Moses and Charlton Heston coming down the hill with the tablets and everything. Maybe we should question, we can question, what is the true basis for discussing morality? And is it?
I mean, Gary, could it be the whole thing with Moses and stuff, like those stories, like as I said, they were instinctual, maybe these properties, but the thing is, our consciousness, we can actually question them, these instincts. Could it be that humanity 10,000 years ago, when we discovered writing and stuff, when we produced writing,
The alphabet, yeah.
Could it be that we actually began to question, why do we have these instincts? These
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Now, the fact that the thing was down on a scroll, it was alphabetized and recorded, not only meant that it had authority that could be easily transported, it also, unfortunately, perhaps from a point of view like authority, meant that it could be criticized. So yes, you're right.
I mean, maybe that's what makes us different. We can actually question our instincts.
This is something. Yeah, I think Dan Dennett said something to this effect on several occasions. That our ability to reflect upon and adapt our thinking about our thinking. It's not inert. It's not something that has no influence or impact in the real world. Because of course it does. Because when we come to that point where we have to act on our will, what is in our mind at the moment that causes our action. It's better to if we've reflected a little bit, and we've done so in the context of ideas and thinking that improves it's the critical thinking. Yeah, that's a survival advantage. If you've thought about it and you've learned from experience and learned from the past and thought about it rationally, your chances are you're going to make a better decision than somebody who hasn't.
Well, I mean, I don't know. The thing is, I'm trying to think of it from an instinctual point of view. Without actually questioning it. You'd actually, just did these things without questioning it. Kind of like religions points out, saying that, like instincts are, you do it. You don't really question what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Like you survive, you're hungry, you want
Okay.
food. That's survival. You want to survive. There's no.
It, it's interesting that sometimes what we call our intuitions or instincts are well, they at least have a faster, more direct route to reality and truth, if you like, than our deliberations. But not always. If you've got the time, if we've got the time to think about it, then it's partially part of our biological inheritance, and it is partially part of a cultural inheritance. And I think that's sometimes why we as secularists are very protective of reason and education and science, because we realise that these are part of a critical Enlightenment tradition that is under threat, and is valuable. So, often the debate between us and conservative theists is a moral one. It's us going, we've got to preserve this heritage, which is our Enlightenment heritage. Otherwise, bad things can happen when there's hypocrisy.
Because this Enlightenment heritage has done us so much, and it's progressed society. Oh crap, we have spam again. Who is this guy? Oh.
I mean, I would try to draw a parallel, though, because part of my studies in college is the history of art. And you said earlier something about, about like how, just as, even what you just said, as a society we kind of grow and our values change, and I guess just to, again, draw the analogy between, say, morality and aesthetics, emotions and just kind of opinion in that sense. In the same way, we would say the same thing is about beauty when we look at a painting. I don't think anybody here, and except a small handful of theists, would ever argue that art is objective. Beauty is objective. I mean, that's, and again, to draw a parallel between the similarities between, say, that and morality is, even in the beginning of the 20th century, or even before, like avant-garde and modern art, I mean, went through huge, you could call growths, it's periods of, extremely brand new ideas and ways of thinking about art that had never, for thousands of years had never come before.
Sure.
But that doesn't suggest anything true. Again, to call like whether or not the painting is beautiful a true statement. Yeah. Again, all that can mean is that I find it to be true. That I feel it's beautiful.
Yeah. But if you look at the history of art, what an interesting framework in which to look at the history of art is as viewing art as a critical process. As the way that art, even from from ancient times in ancient Greece, a play like the Trojan Women, which was put on and showed women being subjugated and sexually enslaved. Within a year of Athens actually having enslaved and taken the women from a Mediterranean island, forget which one at the moment, but it was it was putting things to the critical test. It was putting things to its audience, and it was challenging the way they valued things and felt about things. And this perhaps is as good a function as any, if you want to attribute to art, is that it helps people to criticize things. Modern art criticized, say, beginning of the late 19th century, early 20th century, it was criticizing people, Victorian ideas, the romantic ideas of what had gone before, as to what it is to live in that kind of society. So yes, art is a critical is a critical faculty, is a critical discipline as well, and it is very valuable because it helps us reflect on our desires and our values in the way that science helps. Like science helps us reflect on our beliefs, the truth of our beliefs, by subjecting them to rigorous analysis, critical empirical analysis. So art can be seen as doing something similar to our values and our desires. Does that sort of make sense?
Well, I couldn't agree more. But I mean, I would say art is just.
I'm sorry, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree less.
Good.
Sorry. No, I literally, I'm sorry. Please explain, because I may have missed something. I actually wrote down what you just said. Criticism, modern art, and blah blah blah. And criticism helps us in our understanding about ideas and desires.
Yeah. Well,
What on earth are you talking about?
okay. If if you have a set of ideas in your head, yeah, some people, as you may well have noticed, are very comfortable with them and don't want to challenge them. Other people are open to challenges. Now, some of the ideas in our heads are beliefs. They're the likelihood we attribute to things in the world. And the best way we have of challenging those ideas is scientific inquiry. Well, perhaps similarly, the other kind of ideas we have in the head, our desires, our values, our evaluations, the things that Wittgensteinian is on about, perhaps being exposed to challenging works of art is a good means of challenging those ideas. That's basically what I meant.
Yeah, I mean, it's really...
Yeah, and can I just come back on you? And I don't mean to be very critical, but despite your best efforts to define or explain what you meant, I'm still at a total loss, because art for me is something that is subjective, and
sure,
it doesn't matter how much criticism and how much art history I am taught. Mm-hmm. I will either find a depiction attractive or not. And I just simply don't understand. And again, I made another, when you said some ideas that we have are beliefs. And again, I'm terribly sorry. This sounds to me very much like the type of waffle that I hear from philosophers when they can't actually make their ideas or make their arguments distinct. Okay. I apologise for saying that. Please try to make the arguments distinct so I can understand it.
Let me try. I think what he's saying could basically, correct me if I'm wrong, but you could basically sum it up by saying, art is one of the avenues by which it can shape and mold our values about the world, just in the same way that, say, science does. Learning more about the world, we eventually, change our values as a society and come to different understandings of what it means to be human and in social groups. And in this art, the same can way. I mean, you could say the same thing about that. Art is just one of the ways in which we as a society kind of enlighten ourselves.
I guess art is a figment to a person's mind, I guess, how they perceive the world or how they look at the world abstractly, I guess.
I mean, I could try to give you an example. I could give you the example of maybe like Dada art. It's just the first thing that comes to mind because it's one of my favorite. If you're familiar with like Marcel Duchamp, he was the guy who put in the gallery, it was the kind of anti-art movement in a sense, how it's been characterized. And what he did was ordinary objects. He's the inventor of like the ready-made. And what he did was to take a urinal and just like write Armut on it and enter that into the art show. And the conceptual like revolution that caused in art, I think, changed the way people from then on looked at art and what was considered beautiful. It brought it back to a common. In other words, people started to see more beauty in the mundane things, rather than beauty as this thing that is framed and hung in a gallery. Just that kind of critical thing Gary was talking about. That, you could just say it's criticism, in every domain. The scientific, the artistic, these have all been factors in changing our place in the world and our values we hold about it.
Just don't take things as read. Just don't take the things as they appear to you to be the final word.
I appreciate your comments. I am much better informed, but I have to say none the wiser.
Have any of you guys seen the video by Thinking Atheists? What was it? The burning... what was it, Glenn?
I believe it was called Burn Victims.
Have any of you seen that?
That sounds gruesome.
What is it? I haven't seen it.
It's called Burn Victims.
I think I've seen it, but that was a long time ago.
Like, can we explain it? I don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, Glenn, how long have you seen it ago?
Wow, it's been a long time. It basically exposes it gets people thinking about hell. And, there's people, of course, going to find it offensive, but the whole idea of hell is a very gruesome And in my opinion, it's a very immoral thing for a god to do. But the video is, it's, I think it was banned somewhere because of the graphics. It was offensive, I guess, to some people. But, yeah.
So there's an obvious problem with that. If he's claiming, right, I'm challenging your atheism by showing you scary pictures of burn victims and telling you this is your fate if you don't believe, the obvious problem is he has to demonstrate that it's true.
Well, this video is from the Thinking Atheist, so it's arguing it's.
Oh, I see. I thought it was one of those "you're going to hell and this is your fate" videos. I apologise.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. But yeah, someone was wanting for people to talk about that. They had mentioned in the chat, but it's been a long time since I watched that video. But
I suppose you could argue contra-wise that it's up to the Thinking Atheist to prove that it isn't true, but I can't help thinking that his task would be quite a lot easier than the militant theist ones. I just call him a militant theist. That's not very nice. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, but it's the whole issue with hell. I mean, you guys may not want to go down that path today because that can be quite. That's a whole nother topic.
Do we need hell? Yeah, we do. If we seem to have reached some consensus, we're not all in agreement, obviously, but we seem to have reached some consensus as to the adequacy of nature to morality. Would that be right? Whether we can explicitly say what that relationship is, or whether there's sort of like is-ought gaps or open question arguments or whatever that get in the way, we seem to have reached some kind of consensus that we think that naturalism is adequate to discuss for the existence of morality, be it subjective or objective. Is that correct? Would you say?
Not if you suggest for a moment that it could be objective.
No, I don't. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's a different discussion.
Well, it does. It does.
Well, it matters, but it doesn't perhaps matter to sort of like, you know, to a lot of people.
Morality can be explained by natural causes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, but you don't. Whereas I have a slightly ambiguous. I view with the question of is morality objective or subjective. I think I've used the analogy before. To me, it's like somebody asking, is a zebra black or white? It's a bit both, isn't it? Really, you know. But obviously, you think that it's subjective. I mean, who else thinks it's subjective? Is anybody here who holds out that it's objective in any way?
What is?
What we're calling morality.
I'd say instinctual morality is not a subjective.
So there's there's two of us who are saying it's not entirely subjective, and there's the two of us who are saying yes, it is entirely subjective.
I say the ethics of consciousness, the one that we have, the one that we reason about and stuff, that's subjective as hell. But the instinctive one is the only part that I would say is objective. That's just how I would point out.
Okay, so that's a mixture of views. Okay, that's interesting.
That's how I reason.
Yeah, I mean, my reasoning again, as I say, is based on my naturalism, as my ontology, my metaphysics is naturalistic. It's scientific naturalism, and my approach is meta-ethical. So I put questions as to what put the questions about what the meaning of moral words are, what kinds of things morality exists in, and what's the best means of going about developing it before I start, you know, before the discussion about what moral rules are. Not everybody does that. I know most people start with the moral rules, and they start with very what's called thin concepts of good and bad, and then they try and derive the thicker concepts of virtue and vice from those simple concepts. Moral ethics isn't my speciality, but you know, my views are informed by my naturalism, which, you know, a good book. If I make a book recommendation, I would recommend Patricia Churchland's Brain Trust. That's a good book if you're interested in sort of like contemporary views of the relationship between the natural sciences and morality. Her book, Brain Trust, What Neuroscience Tells Us About Morality. I'd certainly recommend that book because it does tackle...
Oh, fuck, we got another fucking troll.
Did trolls cause problems? I mean, or are they just sort of
No,
like...
it's just annoying, like this person called Mark Von Homo. It says, check it out. New streaming site. Hell yeah. Bitch. Von TV sucks. I run Von now. Check it.
This is ridiculous, isn't it? I don't know.
I don't know how he's doing it either, because this person left.
Yeah, welcome to the internet. But yeah, I'd certainly recommend that book because it tackles some of the I hate to use the word debate, some of the philosophical objections that people make to naturalism in morality, which are things like the Isort gap and Moore's open question argument. Personally, I don't agree with the Isort gap. I think we can bridge the Isort gap teleologically. If you come across a gap, you build a bridge. And I don't think Moore's, or many people actually, outside of apologists, conservative apologists, actually cite Moore's objection to naturalistic morality, or at least not in its original form. So yeah, I'm sort of a naturalist when it comes to ethics, and I have to hold my hands up and admit to being a bit confused, or at least not as precise as some people would wish when it comes to whether morality is subjective or objective. As far as I can see, it's a bit of both because it's a complex thing, because it's a natural phenomenon that we need to investigate.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why I said I say the part that we reason with instinctual ethics, I guess, the primal ethics I called it, talking to you earlier. That is objective because it is what it is. You cannot change that.
Yeah, some parts of what's involved in our doing morality are truth bearers, and not perhaps they're just truth bearing things or facts or things that are the case or have some reference to reality. They seem to have some part in what we do when we do morality, but at the same point, yeah, the subjectivists have got a point because a lot of it, most of it doesn't seem to make sense unless it's something that's subject, say, to other subjects. So the issue is complicated. But then, if you take a naturalistic worldview, if you take a view that, well, you have to be patient and science is your best guide through the confusing mess, I think you get used to that because that's the way the natural world is. It doesn't get handed to you in a revelationary flash and it's all there set out for you to understand with no effort. It takes hard work to understand the world of which we are a part.
Well, yes, it was never so simple than just asking a god to say, "Oh, well, here's the answer."
Yeah, if only, but it's not.
If it was, then why would we just not ask him for everything?
Yeah. It'd be so much simpler, but we have this thing called reason and skepticism and critical thinking that denies us that pleasure.
Well, yes.
Could I ask? Do you think, in any meaningful way, in fact, anyway, absent our presence in the universe, that morality has any meaning at all?
Meaning? Sorry, what do you mean by meaning? Meaning in what sense?
If there weren't humans around, the diktat that thou shalt not kill or thou shalt not murder would be meaningless, would it not?
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't know about humans, but
let me rephrase it. Let me rephrase it. Without sentient beings, morality would be non-existent. Yes.
Okay. I could refine it further. Without beings that need morality, that aren't alive, without living beings that have to live in a cooperative environment, there probably wouldn't be morality. No.
I disagree.
Right. Now, from that. Oh, please go on.
Oh, I would say because organisms that are instinctually have that simple thing.
Yeah, but if there weren't any living beings, there wouldn't be any.
Well, if you go with that though, then yes. But if you said all sentient things, I thought you said.
Yeah.
Well, no, I thought Gary was saying the difference between sentient beings that don't require cooperation within a social group.
Sentience. The problem I have is sentience is something that, if you take the naturalistic picture, sentience is something that comes relatively late. There are lots of prototypical moral behaviours, cooperative behaviours, caring behaviours, and that kind of economy of exchange of cooperation and favour and distrust and all those things that happen before the physical mechanisms that realise sentience came into being. Yeah, there's to get where DPR, I think DPR is going, which is that if he, it's not objective if it doesn't depend on if it depends on living things. You have to go a lot deeper into the physical history of the universe, because sentience, consciousness, and all these very high plane mental phenomena on the naturalistic, physicalist, if you like, worldview, these are very quite late comers into the picture.
All right, let me put it in a different way. No life forms whatsoever in the universe are objective morals floating around in the ether.
No. If the universe was dead in its entirety, then no, there wouldn't be moral abstracts floating around in the
how if you accept that, how can you even begin to suggest that there may be some objective morality?
Yeah. Because it's again, sorry to come back to definitions, but it does come down to what is meant by objective, okay.
Tell me what definition you're using of objective.
Okay, well, I can tell you the definition that I notice people commonly having to respond to when they deny objectivity. The first thing that you get accused of usually is that you just think morality is a matter of local opinion, of particular people in particular places. Yeah, and I suppose what I'm saying is, when I talk of objectivity, is I'm saying, well, no, if there are living beings that have to cooperate in some kind of sense, then there are facts that are germane to that situation that mean that, to some extent, the right thing to do, is not just a matter of localized personal opinion. Objectivity is not the same thing as I know there's a lot of people who do this. The usual suspects. They assert that objectivity is the absolute, or the absolute is the abstract, and the abstract is God. And there's a lot of reasoning towards that kind of 17th century rationalist continental. It's not the case. You can have objectivity without having to sort of talk about things that are immaterial, or you can have objectivity. You can talk about objectivity in a much more limited sense, which I suppose is what I'm doing here, which is objectivity just means not dependent on who the particular individual happens to believe. That's all I mean here.
So and I've heard William Lane Craig, he tries to demarcate the two ideas by saying, oh, well, that's intersubjectivity, and, well, sure, if that's what you want to call it. I think that's the most sensible definition of objective there is. That more than that, the degree, in other words, you could even think of it as a continuum. The degree to which it is subjective is the degree to which everyone agrees on, say, said observation or something. And that's the sense in which, say, science is objective. Science isn't objective in the sense that it tells truths about the world that are independent of minds. No, it's based on observations by minds that all have to agree.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It can sort of get to us. Eventually, we can trust science to tell but what science say. If science says something is real, we're in a better position rationally to trust its proclamations on what is real than things that don't go to the same sort of lengths or efforts to avoid error. Yes, but science. There's something to scientific realism, but scientific realism isn't perhaps as fervently assertive about reality beyond all question as is other kinds of supernatural realism.
I was going to say,
I hope not, anyway.
Well, I was going to say, we got to end the show a little early. But wait, you're gonna do an after show, right?
Well, yeah. In that case, though, I might need to head off. I need to get some cigarettes.
So you'll be
I'll be back. I'll be back in like 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, so good. So you guys will be around for 10, 15 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we'll have an after show. So be sure to tune in tomorrow for the Line Go Show U.S. edition. And we have Inspiring Philosophy, Rat, Johan, and we're having them versus Cheeky
Chicky
Vimito.
Vimto.
Yeah, him and Realistic Nihilist. So tune in. Signing out.